Introducing Built to Last, a new podcast by American Express. I'm Elaine Welteroth, and I'm excited to host the debut season where we will be deep diving into the stories, history, and continued legacy of small businesses that shape American culture. Through these important conversations, we'll hear how the Black business leaders of our past have inspired today's Black-owned small businesses and communities. Join us for the debut season of Built to Last on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast, sponsored by Lono Coffee. Visit lonocoffee.com, use promo code COFFEE2020 for a discount. Fresh pound of coffee or 5 makes an excellent holiday gift, trust me. Today, I visit with my pal Mitch Tischler from NBC Sports Washington and the Washington Football Talk podcast. We talk about Mitch going from behind the camera to being on podcasts and a little bit of celebrity and more. Plus, we talk about the offensive line. Does Mitch buy into this team? And then I chat with Tyler Roman, former NFL scout, about some fantasy football, Antonio Gibson, and Florida quarterback Kyle Trask. It's never too early to look at the draft. It's an odd spot to be in here, a team that's contending for a title, or at least an NFC East title, and also a top 10 draft pick. Odd times, folks. Don't forget you can read my work on ESPN.com. Follow Mitch on Twitter at Mitch_Tischler, Tischler, and Tyler at NFL Scout 21. And now, here's my conversation with NBC Sports Washington's Mitch Tischler. All right, Mitchell. Well, I'm very excited to have you on, partly because I want to make Pete Haley jealous, but the other thing is I just enjoy your story. So you've gone from a cameraman / photojournalist to now a celebrity on the Washington Football Talk podcast. I'm going to start there because I am curious for you, how weird has this been for you to go from someone who's always been behind the camera to now somebody who's more out front of things and a little bit of a celebrity here?
It's definitely weird. I mean, it's crazy how this industry has changed over the years. I mean, even for you, John, you were you still are, and you've been a writer forever, and now you're a star on all these different networks and have your own podcast and all that. I think it's just the era of access. Going back to when I first started on the Washington football team beat, I think 2007 was my first training camp, and through that season and through the others with the reporters I used to work with, I always give them little tidbits or nuggets or notes that I saw on the field because I'm kind of a little bit closer than a lot of the reporters are. And now we live in this day and age where kind of everyone has a voice. Obviously, every fan does on Twitter and every, pundit does on, some national network. And it's created a space where I've been able to kind of, not just have to tell a reporter who then goes on TV and tells what they see. I'm able to kind of give my own views. So it's been a crazy road. I mean, I don't know that I ever really saw my career going in this direction, but it's been a lot of fun and I'm enjoying it probably the most that I have since I left college.
But it's funny that you bring that up because I don't know that people understand just the role that a photographer can play, whether it's cameraman, just a regular photojournalist or for print photographer, and the role they can play in helping that coverage and I learned that early on my time on the beat. There was a photographer for the Washington Times named Ross Franklin who was great at giving his guys little nuggets. So it was like having another set of eyes out there. And I've had photographers who have helped me like that. And I've seen it at the Washington Post. I've seen John McDonald, all those guys. So, yeah. I don't think that people quite appreciate the role that people like that play.
Yeah. I mean, I think you look on, in movies and on TV, it's always kind of the schlub that's holding the heavy thing on his shoulder. But certainly in our world, in the world of sports, particularly the world of sports, photographers are right on the sidelines. We're in the middle of the warm-ups. We hear the pump-up speeches. We're the guys that are shooting it and seeing it. And, everyone who watches a game on TV, you're seeing one camera that's live, but there are 17 other cameras that are shooting individual things as well. And so certainly, I think part of it is, a lot of the photographers you mentioned, go into a game and knowing the storylines, and you're paying attention to particular people or particular things, and you're able to pick up a lot of nuance on the sidelines and in the huddles and on the bench that, you can't necessarily see from a press box or a press seat. And I give JP Finley a ton of credit for, kind of allowing me to have, a voice early on and be able to chime in on the podcast. And I think things have kind of grown from there. But, there's a lot of reporters out there that have big egos and think that they know more, than everybody else. And certainly one of the great things about working in our media room is that people aren't particularly like that. And certainly, John, as I've gotten to know you and JP and, the others, it's impressive, to see how, you guys take in knowledge from every walk of life and every which way and kind of put together the big story from all the little pieces.
But it's funny too, because you brought up how in this day and age, and I remember, I don't know if it was 10 years ago or something like that, how you see how social media has changed the business and the way things get out there, whether it's your role increasing or even like who's putting out certain stories. I remember the Junkies had a story years ago, and I remember I can see them having it. I trusted what they're getting because they have access to people too. And this whole business is, in that end, it's just about you didn't always have, and the Junkies have their radio show so they can get stuff out there, but some other people may put something on social media. They didn't have that ability in the past to do that. Now you do. So it's news can kind of come from anywhere because it's hey, maybe this person knows the right person and you put it out there, but it is how it's changed. And for you, it really has gone that way too. And when did you know for yourself that it had taken another step? I mean, when as far as people either saying something to you, when did you know it's oh, this is a little bit different?
I guess when I first started on the podcast, I was doing a lot of the technical stuff with Rich Tandler and JP, and then kind of on game days, I would give them kind of the field perspective. And I think about midway through that first season that that I kind of started contributing to the podcast a little bit. When I started jumping in on the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday podcasts, and for me it felt like it was the next step, doing that, because you in any job, I'd been covering the team for 8 years or so, and I love covering it, and it was great. But at the same time, I was starting to look around and see what's next, what's more, and kind of this was a perfect vehicle, a perfect avenue to build off what I had already built in the Washington, D.C. market and with the Washington football team, and kind of expand on it.
You also have a football background too, so that helps as well. So
yeah, certainly.
Give people a sense of Yeah.
I mean, it's not that much of a football background. There are people that cover it that are around it way more than I was. But
it was 10 years in the NFL, right?
What's that?
It was 10 years in the NFL, right? That's what you told me.
I was the guy standing out front with the sign saying, "Sign me, sign me, sign me." Now I was recruited by a couple of D1 schools, and ended up playing in college, but went to Maryland originally to play football, but that didn't happen because I messed up my ankle and kind of didn't have the love for the sport that I do now.
But it also gives you that perspective. So you're going to hone in on the big fellas up front. And I'm just curious, let's kind of segue into what this team is now. And when you look at what they're doing with that offensive line, what jumps out at you?
I think the cohesiveness. I think John Matsko, the offensive line coach, has done a great job in year one getting these guys to kind of gel together. Certainly there was a ton of question marks, heading into the season. I kind of thought that the top end range for this O-line unit might be kind of middle of the pack. And I think they've kind of solidified themselves right there. Morgan Moses has been a great anchor for this O-line. And, Brandon Sheriff has come back from, the injury last year and been super solid. The guy who's, not talked about nearly enough is Chase Roulier. He's really locked down that center position. He's going to be a free agent coming up, and he's a guy that I think they really need to key on re-signing along with Brandon Sheriff. But I think John Metzko was, coming off the Bill Callahan era of offensive line where he was kind of a larger than life coach. John Metzko is kind of a guy who's behind the scenes and we don't talk about very often, but I think he's done a really great job of getting these guys to work as one unit.
I agree. And I think the other thing you touched on, Morgan Moses, we've both been around him throughout his entire time here. What have you seen different in him maybe this year, even the last couple of years?
I just think he's been more consistent. I mean, I think last year specifically, and he had seemed to be skating by. I would say it didn't seem like he potentially was working as hard as he is now this year, and more so, I think the leadership role that he's taken this year. I mean, always Trent Williams was there in the background as the leader of the O-line, and basically his entire time that Morgan has been here. Last year, things were so up in the air with what was going to happen with Trent and everybody else. This year, Morgan's really taken on that leadership role, and he's really solidified, I guess, the left side of the line now, but the right side earlier.
Yeah. You guys had him on the podcast recently, too. Did anything he say kind of stand out to you that you recall?
Yeah,
that you say, oh, that's just kind of an example.
We talk all the time about football players when they have their kids, how it kind of changes the way that they approach the game and approach life. And, Morgan, I think is in that realm as well. His father passed away, this off season, and he said that he gave legitimate thought to stepping away and retiring. And to me, I think when you have kind of those big life-changing moments, it can kind of give you some perspective on where you are in life and in career. And especially when you look along that offensive line, not just the starters, but there are so many young guys in there between the Wesses and Keith Ishmael and even Chase Roulier to that point. That Morgan, I think, really has stepped in and taken the onus to be the leader, to be the guy who's going to usher the young guys in.
How do you think this group can hold up? They got a tough stretch coming up here. How do you think can they hold up, do you think?
I think they can hold up. Honestly, I think the biggest thing, I think they do need to, in next year, address the left side of the line a little bit more. Maybe Wes Schweitzer can be a fit, longer term, but certainly at left tackle, I think they need a little bit of help. Alex Smith helps out this offensive line so much. I mean, you can just see it in the past couple of games. He gets the ball out so quickly. He's decisive in his decisions. You can see him talking, and if the defense identifies itself to him, he's going to be able to adjust the line. He's going to be able to set the protection the way that it needs to, and he's able to get the ball out quickly, like I said before. And that's the biggest thing that can help a group that isn't as stout on paper as some other units around the league.
Are you buying this team 2 wins in a row? Are you buying that they can stay in this for the next 5 games? Again, 3 tough games coming up.
I'm buying that they're going to be playing for the playoffs in the last 2-3 weeks of the season. I'm buying that. Is there a stable for long-term success here? Probably not without some key upgrades. And you can start at left tackle. You can look at safety. You can look at a second wide receiver, obviously quarterback, outside of Alex Smith. But the funniest thing for me has just been the consternation, 2 years ago when Alex Smith was 6-2 and everyone was so frustrated with the way that they had gotten to 6-2. Now everyone is super excited that he's won 2 games in a row and that the offense is moving and that, Antonio Gibson is coming together. I think you're really seeing, people are kind of understanding that you can win ugly and still win and put yourself in the positions that you want to be in, and that's competing for a playoff spot.
Mitch, it's funny you bring that up because I was telling my kids, my wife, other people, like, since that Dallas win, pretty much anything I tweet out involving this team, especially if it's McLaurin or Antonio Gibson, the chance for 1,000 likes is very high. And I'm not exaggerating with that either. I don't think I've seen the fan base as energized as they've been after that win in a long time. And I think they understand that there's still a lot of growth that still faces this team, but it seemed like that win has really maybe either energized the fan base or maybe staved off some of the negativity for now. But I don't know. I just feel like it's been kind of weird, not weird, but just different since that win. I don't know if you've gotten that sense at all or not.
Yeah, well, I think you look at kind of what this team has done through the draft of the past 5, 6 years, 7 years even, post the RG3 trade and all that. And there hasn't been a whole lot of sexy picks. There hasn't been a whole lot of players for the fan base to get behind. And now you have Chase Young, you have Terry McLaurin, you have Antonio Gibson, you have guys that you can look at, Montez Sweat. I mean, there are others as well, but you have guys that I think the fan base can kind of latch onto as these are guys that, knock on wood, knock on anything, that are going to be here for the next 3, 4, 5 years, are going to be the core of your team going forward. And there hasn't been, since the Alfred Morris RG3, and there was a big void before that, there hasn't been a ton of, exciting players on offense, which is what a lot of fans want to watch, around. And right. I think watching these young guys grow from within the organization and be homegrown, I think is really, attracting, the fan base back. John, we talk about it all the time. If this team, gets back to a third of what they were, in the glory years, this is a fan base that's just waiting to explode. It's there. You see it, in spots from time to time. If they can win a couple football games, momentum's a hell of a drug. And, the Steelers are a really good football team. The Niners are a really good football team. So are the Seahawks. But things start moving in the right direction, and we see these things happen in the NFL all the time.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that's what has struck me since that Dallas game is just how hungry people are. But it's just the example is like, you're right. I think that's a good point. There are young guys that they can latch onto and feel like, hey, it's going to be fun watching this kid grow. Because I'm telling you, anything I tweet out of McLaurin, it's almost guaranteed to get 1,000 likes. Last question, and the Eagles play tonight as we're taping this, so we don't know what's going to happen. If they win, they're in great shape. But as we look right now, where do you feel Washington stacks up as far as its chances to pull this thing out?
I think a lot of it depends on Danny Jones's MRI on his hamstring. I think, maybe by the time this comes out, we'll have some more answers, but it sounds like he's going to miss a couple weeks. And, Washington football fans know Colt McCoy well. And the Giants have a tough, 4-game stretch here. Seahawks, Cards, Browns, and Ravens before ending with the Cowboys. They might only get one more win. I feel, maybe I'm being overly bullish. I feel good about this team. I mean, I think they're going to get to at least 6 wins, and I think they might be able to pull one off against, the Niners maybe, or the Seahawks at home. Every year, Washington seems to win one of those games that no one expects them to, and they lose one of those games everyone thinks they will win. I think they already lost that game against the Giants, the home game. Where's that win coming? Is that win out there this year? And if they get to 7 wins, I think they're a playoff team. But we do 100 chips, on our podcast. I have 70 chips on Washington winning the NFC East. I have 25 on the Giants, and 5 can be split up amongst the Cowboys and Eagles. I think FedEx Field might see a January home football game, and maybe I'm getting out over my skis, but that's where I stand right now.
Rule it out.
Yeah, I think it's a possibility.
You can't rule it out, and it's funny because with Alex Smith playing quarterback, like, that might be, we thought the biggest story was him coming back. It might be him leading this team to that division title, especially if they got to 7 wins. And the other thing that sums up 2020 better than anything, Mitch, is the fact that 95% of your chips are on this team and the Giants.
Right.
Nobody would have had that in September. So that's fantastic. Mitch, thanks a lot for coming on. Enjoyed it.
Where are your chips?
My chips? I mean, I'm not putting a number on there because I haven't thought about it, but I look at this team and because of all the other stuff going on with the other teams, that the Eagles, if they win tonight, they're in a good spot. So let's say they don't, just based on who they're playing. But if they do, that's a really good spot for them. Otherwise, this team looks in good shape. The thing that concerns me, I mean, every team has something that concerns you, right? The Giants without the quarterback, will Colt McCoy stay healthy? How's he going to look? That is a tough schedule, and Jones was playing better. But with this team, it's like they do have to pull off one of those 3. And then if they pull off one of those 3, I think they go into those last 2 feeling really good, and that could be the difference. because the Carolina and Philly, they can win those games. So, I think if they get to 7, they're a lock. If they get to 6, then they may need a little bit of help. But I don't, I could see them finishing 4-12. I could see it being 7-9. And, but I would lean more toward like a 6 wins at this point, which would match my season prediction. But that prediction has changed about 5 times this year. So I can't sit there and say if they go 6-10, I got it right, because I've changed it so many times. So, but yeah, I would give them an edge right now because I think they're healthier, the schedule, and then Alex Smith.
Totally.
And I also think the coaching staff has done a good job too. So, all right, Mitch. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, John. It was a lot of fun.
After this break, I'll be back with former NFL scout Tyler Roman as we look at some good fantasy plays for this week. Can you finally trust Antonio Gibson to be an every week back in your fantasy football leagues? And what about old friend Jordan Reed? And what does Tyler think about Florida quarterback Kyle Trask?
Support for this podcast comes from The First One with DJ Khaled, a new podcast only available on Amazon Music.
What's up, y'all? This is DJ Khaled, and this is The First One. We hear from all the A-list music stars like J Balvin, Nas, and Kelly Rowland about songs that didn't change the game, but changed their life.
It's almost like sometimes before you even get in the industry, it's like you set up to fail. And there's so many moments where you can win. And the winning is great, but it's so many things that you go through to get to the win.
And so much more, who tell their stories about their first hits that took them to the next level, changed their life, overlooked to being overbooked.
When I was recording the song, I already knew it was going to be a global hit. And I'm not joking, my G. I really felt it inside of me. I was like, I just can't wait to see it #1.
Join me every Thursday with The First One drops only on Amazon Music. Let's go.
You've heard me talking about Lone Oak Coffee for a couple months now. Let me tell you a little bit about who they are and what they're about. Lone Oak Coffee is based in the Shenandoah Valley, just a nice bunch of people who are open for business during this trying time. Just look at their website, loneoakcoffee.com, and what do they highlight? Their core values of quality, family, transparency. They work with co-op farmers from all over the world to source their beans. They also support small farmers to find the right beans. During this pandemic, one of my saving graces has been grinding my beans from Lone Oak Coffee and taking a few minutes before the day to savor the coffee, get my mind right. Put a little jazz or Frank Sinatra or Louis Armstrong on in the background, it's even better. I've enjoyed all their blends, but among my favorites, the Ethiopian Guji, love the berry flavor, the Mexican Chiapas, and their house blend. Start your day off right with Lone Oak Coffee. Visit loneoakcoffee.com, that's LONEOAK coffee.com. Use promo code COFFEE2020 for a discount. You can thank me later. All right, Tyler. Well, I want to get into a little bit of college quarterback play, Kyle Trask in particular, in a minute. A little bit of Antonio Gibson. Let's start with some fantasy football talk. And there is another game Tuesday night. Weird, but this is the 2020. So what are you looking at for this weekend? Who are some of your good plays for this weekend?
Well, I'm looking at receiver first, and you got Deebo Samuels coming off his best game of the year by far. He's been plagued by injuries, but he had 133 yards and 11 receptions last Sunday, and he's available in about 50% of leagues on Yahoo, and he's super talented, just been injury prone this year, but they get him the ball in a myriad of ways out of the backfield and stuff. And even with Mullins at quarterback, I could trust him as a wide receiver 2 or 3 going forward. Then you had Devontae Booker, especially if Josh Jacobs is going to be out. I think guys going to pick him up now because Vegas likes to run the ball. And, Booker had 2 TDs just 2 weeks ago. So he's productive when he gets a chance, and he's going to have some volume coming his way, especially if Josh Jacobs is out. Then you have Latavius Murray, who had a really nice day yesterday for the Saints. He had 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. With Hill at quarterback, New Orleans is running the ball a lot because I think obviously that suits what Taysom does. Kamara's been banged up, so Murray's getting more opportunities, but I think they're just going to split some reps going forward because even when Kamara is fully healthy, Murray gets 8 to 10 touches a game. So especially if he's going to get an uptick with them running more, I think he's a good play. And if you need to stream a quarterback this week, I think you guys should look at Kirk Cousins. He's had at least 19 points in 4 straight games, and he plays the poorest Jacksonville defense this week.
For Devontae Booker too, I think they have the Jets coming up, don't they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I think he's a great play this week. So I think Josh, he had a pretty bad ankle injury, at least what it seems. We'll get more information going forward. But I think if he's out this week, he's a must start going against the Jets.
What about Cam Akers?
Cam Akers, again, yeah, it's a guy I like from Florida State. He's finally getting a little more carries here for the Rams. I think he's the most talented guy in that backfield between Henderson and Malcolm Brown, and he's finally getting a little more play. He had a touchdown yesterday. I think he's definitely worthy of a pickup. You maybe want to see one more week because McVay's been going back and forth with his committee to see if Akers can get some more touches, but I definitely think he's worth a pickup at least.
I think they got what? They have Arizona, the Patriots, and the Jets. They have a chance to run the ball against those teams.
Exactly.
What do you do with Jordan Reed?
Now, Jordan Reed, and going back to Deebo Samuel, Nick Mullins hadn't been up and down a couple games he's played. I don't think Garoppolo's coming back anytime soon. But Jordan Reed is still talented from what I've seen in the game I saw yesterday. He's still a great route runner, has that shake to him on the top of routes. He's getting open, but Mullins missed him a few times. But I think he's also worth a pickup just because of tight end play. I think I said it before, it's just been really bad in fantasy and just across the league stat-wise. So I think Jordan's worth a pickup. And, if you don't have many other better options at tight end, I think he definitely could be put in your lineup and hopefully give you at least 5 or 6 points and maybe a touchdown. So
are we at the point where you can trust Antonio Gibson every week? And I say that knowing that they have some good run defenses up the next few weeks.
I think so. I mean, I think he's inching up towards, if not already, a top 5 running back this year, points perspective wise in fantasy. So he's getting the volume there. He's getting a little more looks on third down, especially this past week in Dallas. If he can get 5 to 7 looks a game out of the backfield on top of the 15-20 carries he gets, I mean, the volume's going to be there. And yes, and then the run defenses are coming up, but even Pittsburgh is not as good against the run as they are against the pass. I know they struggled against the Ravens just a few weeks ago. So I think there's some plays to be made. And I like the way that Scott Turner's scheming up the run game and even keeping McKissick involved and motion pre-snap to open up some holes for Gibson that way as well. So I think he's definitely can be trusted the rest of the way.
And I think the other thing is I think they're going to try and rely a lot more on him because his role seems to be expanding a little bit. I know there are still some protection issues at times for him, but I mean, I think he's going to get those chances, and I think that will help, right? I mean, that's what people want. You want the guy to get chances.
Exactly. And like I said, I think he had a snap uptick this past week against Dallas. McKissick, I think, is still better in the backfield, definitely better pass protection wise. So, if Antonio can shore up that part of his game when it comes to pass protection on third downs, he will be in there more on third downs, but that's just been his biggest downfall so far this year. So if he gets a little better than that, he's going to have more opportunities to catch a pass out of the backfield. Yeah,
it's funny because McKissick is still their pass catcher guy, and I loved that signing when they did it, and I like it even more now because I think that guy makes guys miss more than anybody. It's out of the backfield. Does a really good job with that. Let's go to some college quarterbacks. You watched Kyle Trask recently. What did you see when you're watching him?
I watched him against Georgia a few weeks back, and he had a pretty good game. He had, I think, 4 touchdowns. He had a great game. He did. From what I see, he's a good, accurate thrower when he has time in the pocket, feet set. Good arm strength, not amazing, but it gets the job done. Reads the field pretty well, goes through progressions well. Good pocket movement from what I've seen. He has a good feel for it. Very smart, decisive player. Finds an open man in mismatches. I also like that he finds the check down when it comes to that. Sometimes young quarterbacks want to make the big play, but he was able to check it down. Really good ball placement as well. And he gives his guys a chance. And some things that I didn't like, though, he's not as accurate when he leaves the pocket on the run. The blitz and the rush definitely bothers him. He gets very happy feet in the pocket, which leads to errant throws. I didn't like his footwork in certain situations in that because I think he was trusting his arm too much, and his arm strength isn't, a guy like Mahomes or stuff like that. So I think he's got to work on that. And, but overall, I think he can be a starter in time. I think he's more of a second-round player, maybe late first. How once we get closer to April, how quarterback's going to rise up the boards. But the talent is there. He did have 1 pick, but I blame him more on the receiver. There was 2 receivers running in the same area, which you don't really see. That something went wrong. Receiver ran a wrong route. But, he's a good player. He's having a Joe Burrow-like start to the season there in the SEC. So he can be an Heisman contender. But either way, Florida's a good team, and Trask is doing really well. So he's going to have some more opportunities. I'm really excited to see him play Alabama in the SEC championship game if it gets to that as a way it's trending right now.
Sure. And does he remind you of anybody in terms of his style?
Well, I heard people try to say he was a little like Dak Prescott but I think people were making an assumption because he was coached by Dan Mullen, just like Dak was in Mississippi State. They're similar body type wise, but I don't see, he's not the runner Dak is. He's not afraid to lower his shoulder though. A couple of times I see him run those RPOs. So he definitely has a little bit of athleticism to him, but I guess I don't see the Dak Prescott. I'd have to think more about who I would. He's like a 6'4", 230 guy. He's a big built dude. But from what I've seen, I heard Dak, and I don't see that quite as well when it comes to athleticism.
And you said, because it's funny that you put the round on him too, because I know it's funny when you talk to some of these GMs and all that, as you know, they don't always like to put a round on a guy. Some guys just like to say, well, he's a red chip, blue chip, whatever. But you think in that second, third round range.
Yeah, just because from what I've seen, he's not going to be.
At least as of this point, as you said, that can change.
Exactly. I just don't see him as a day one starter right away. I think he's a smart player, and I think he has a good feel for the game. He was throwing receivers open too. He has nice anticipation. So I definitely think there's some things you can work with him. I just wouldn't put him in the same class, of course, as the Fields or Lawrence, or even I like Zack Wilson better. I have to watch a little more of Mac Jones, but I think he's more in that Mac Jones area of the 5 or 6 quarterback range. But again, there's still some more ball to be played, and especially let's see how he does if they play Alabama. Obviously, Alabama's team is not as good as it's been in years past, but it's still going to be a worthy opponent for him to go against, especially for a chance to make the college football playoffs. You want to see what he does in a big moment like that.
Tyler, awesome stuff as always. And we're going to be talking about quarterbacks probably for a few more months here and everywhere. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man.
What makes someone a criminal? Getting caught. Experience the reality of Cyberpunk 2077. Drive supercars, battle corporations, and upgrade your body.
That's what I'm talking about!
Make a name for yourself in the massive open world of Night City.
A city of endless opportunity.
From the creators of The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt. Cyberpunk 2077.
Hell yeah!
Available December 10th on Xbox, PlayStation, PC, and Stadia.
Rated M for mature.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Mitch and Tyler for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. Thanks also to Lono Coffee for their continued support. I'll be back with another episode Thursday. We'll take a look at the Steelers and much, much more.